on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You already know who it is. It's Tom from Wrench-a-holics, and today we're back in the lab working on the coupe. What else is better? But just to pick up where we left off, we went ahead and swapped out on the last video the master cylinder on the Hydro from the reservoirs, from the inline style to the reservoir style. Pretty much this is what we're going to need in conjunction to work with our villains kit that we got. And also, I went ahead and just prepped out some parts from villains. These parts come bare metal. If you live in cities where it's prone to raining, you guys already know who you are. I live in California, so unfortunately I don't have to worry about this issue, but these are bare metal when you get them from villains. And what happens is they'll rust up. So obviously I went ahead and just put some paint on it just to prevent that. By all means, if you guys want to go ahead and slap on the kit and you're not worried about the rust, go ahead. But for me, I just like it, plus it looks good. But if you want to prevent yourself from having to take everything back off just to get this bracket, go ahead and shoot some paint. It's highly recommended. But we're going to go ahead and install that. There's a lot of work to do. So enough talking and let's get to it. Alright, so first things first, we got to take the wheel off in order to install everything. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You've seen me jack up this car a million times, exaggerated, but no need. I'm going to go ahead and just do all the work and have everything set up. Alright, so we have the car jacked up. Again, please work safe, use the jack stand. But here we are. First part, taking the wheel off. The next part is taking everything off here. Pretty much we're going to start with this axle nut right here. We're going to take that off and slowly work our way back. So the axle nut's got to come off. The caliper with the bracket's got to come off. Rotor's got to come off. And then once we get that all done, we're going to go ahead and move to the hub. The hub is connected by 4 bolts that are attached to the back of the knuckle. These probably be the hardest ones to get to because the spacing here is so small. But it can be done. Again, if this is the first time you've been messing with this and you do live in those areas where it rains and rust is just prone to happening, this is not going to be easy. WD-40 and PB Blaster would be your best friend, to be honest with you. But I live in California, so fortunately I don't have that issue of rusting. I mean, I do have surface rust, but it's not to where it's caked on. And on top of that, I've already done this before when I had to redo all my links and change out the axle. So these bolts shouldn't be rusted out, and it should be fairly easy. But again, if this is your first time doing it, just take your time, think methodically, don't get mad. It's a lot of work. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. I'll walk you through it, and hopefully we get this thing done. Remove the cotter pin. I went ahead and already started that. Broke off the little 2 tabs that we bend over so that the cotter pin doesn't back out. So we're gonna go ahead and replace that. But the first thing you gotta do is remove the cotter pin. It can be hard, but if you use a little leverage, it can be easy. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna pretty much go like this, hook up to the part of the cotter pin, and you're gonna be hitting on this part right here. Once you do that, cotter pin will be able to slide out. These are not intended to be reused. You have to replace these. Go ahead and just buy new cotter pins, so that you can have that secure so that your axle nut doesn't back out. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with the axle nut. I think it's a 30. Nope, I lied. It's a 36. Perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and use this axle. We're gonna remove the axle nut. It can be hard. You can probably pull up the e-brake and have enough leverage if you have like a breaker bar and something to add on to it to remove it. If not, you can always put the wheel back on and place it on the ground and then jump on the breaker bar that way. So you'll be able to have more counter traction as far as not making this part spin. Before we get down to that, because I'm going to see if I can break it off without having to drop the car again, but we're going to take off the OEM rear caliper and the bracket, and that's done by using a 17 mil. The 17 mil is what holds the bracket onto the rear of the car and what the caliper attaches to. So we're going to go use a 17. Again, don't let it hang because you can mess up the rubber lines. Just tuck it up so it's not dangling. We went ahead and removed the rear caliper bracket with rear caliper, the OEM one, and we went ahead and removed the rotor. Next, we're going to go ahead and knock out this axle nut. And then from here, if you have your OEM dust shield, I don't remember if you can see it, but since I've already done it, I took mine off. These are the 4 bolts right here. There's one of them right there, and another one directly below it, and then adjacent to these, there's 2 more. These are the ones that allow you to remove the hub off of the car, off the knuckle. and then you're gonna go ahead and slip on the bracket in between the knuckle and the hub. So we're gonna go do that right now. These can be hard to get to. Again, the spacing here is really tight, and if you have like aftermarket O'Reilly's AutoZone axles, they don't have the little notch that makes this a lot easier. You just got to make it work. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that and start putting everything back together. First, this is gonna be the main task. This might be hard, but I'm gonna go ahead and just break it off and see what we can do. Alright, so in order for us to actually get access to the bolts that hold the hub on, I just had to move the axle so that I can get clearance for a 19mm socket to fit in here. Again, if you have like aftermarket or replacement non-OEM axles, you don't have the slots in them, so you're gonna have to remove that in order to get to the bolts. The slots were made so that you can get access to the bolt simply by rotating the axle. The cutout would be perfect to where you can fit a socket over it and do the work that way without having to remove the axle. But unfortunately, I had to do that because I have aftermarket ones. But yeah, so we already have them loose. I just gotta back them out. And then the next thing is to remove this hub so that we can get to work on the actual knuckle itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the bolts and then show you what you have to do to the knuckle as far as having to shave down material in order to fit the bracket and the caliper all together. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this. We have 3 of the 4 bolts holding the hub on. Fortunately, my hub is loose, so it's pretty much falling. It's about to fall off, so I have to secure it with my right hand. The biggest thing here, why it's so hard for it to come off, is that this area right here gets rusted out and it seizes on. So that is your issue. You can use some WD-40 to help. Again, like I said, I've done this before already, so everything is just coming off really easy, reluctantly. But again, if it's your first time, it's not going to be so easy. I just want to make sure that you guys do know that where you're going to have your trouble points. One, these bolts will be rusted out and it's going to be hard to remove, so you know, PB Blast, WD-40, and once you get those bolts, your hub will still be stuck onto the car because it'll be rusted out right here on this inner rim. So the next thing we're going to do is actually some work to the knuckle in order to get everything put back on in reverse order. Again, as you can see, my freaking axles is chilling. I had to do that in order to remove the bolts. Again, since I don't have OEM ones, it's not as easy, but if you do have OEM ones, lucky for you guys, just rotate the axle till the slots line up and you'll be able to get a 19mm socket on there, and then you're all good to go. Villains do require you to shave down some numbers and a casting part of the knuckle itself. Some cars don't need to do it, some majority of us have to. So these numbers right here, primarily, you got to shave that flat, and then also this casting right here, you can see it, it's kind of like a triangle. You're gonna have to shave part of this down in order for the new caliper to sit. What's gonna happen is that caliper is gonna run into this part. You won't be able to sit it right. Once we get those done, it's pretty much a test fit, a trial and error, and seeing how much we have to shave down, since this sort of looks like a brace right here, so I don't really want to shave it down too much. I just want to shave it down to where I clear the caliper. Again, you can do whatever you guys want. I've seen guys, you know, shave it all the way down to where it's like an L again, but it looks like a bracing to me, so I don't want to sacrifice the bracing. I mean, I'm already going to be doing that by shaving it down, but it's a necessary evil, since that's what's gonna prevent me from putting on that caliper. My apologies if all of a sudden I feel like I'm yelling at you guys, but I put some earplugs on, put my glasses on so that we can get to work safely. Again, you're gonna want to use this flapper disc. It doesn't really matter where you get it from, Home Depot, freaking Harbor Freight, doesn't matter where you get it. Just make sure you get one, because you're gonna need it in order to shave down these casting imperfections, I should say. Again, it'll be a trial and error. It's gonna be a fit, cut until you get it just right. But for now, it looks okay. So we're gonna go and put the bracket on with the caliper to see if it lines up and this doesn't become an issue. Here is the bracket. You gotta make sure you get the right one. You wanna get the one that is offsetted to where these two studs are angling this way as opposed to angling down. If you get that way, it's the wrong one. These are side specific, so you gotta make sure. All you gotta do is push it down and you should be able to see if we're gonna have any issues with clearance. So we got it mostly down. Again, if you really need that fine touches, you can always use the file. Just, you know, pretty much file it down. Ideally, you're not gonna want to do that first. It's gonna take you forever. So use the clapper disc, get as much as you can off, and then do the fine touches with a file, and you should be all right. Alright, test fit number 2, see if this works, and if it does, we put everything back in reverse order. So we pretty much got this portion down as far as I would like. Obviously it clears the caliper, so everything now is just reverse order. There's a trick to putting on the actual caliper, but once I get to that part I'll show you. We just shot some paint on it, again just to prevent some rusting since it is exposed metal. Alright, so when installing the hub back on, those 4 bolts right there were the 19mm socket. Pretty much what you're going to do is you're going to torque it down to 70 foot-pounds of torque. So again, your lug nuts around like 87, so you don't really have to hammer those on. But 72 foot-pounds, so it's rated per the FSM. So yeah, don't over time them, you can strip it out. 72 foot-pounds is the max on those 4. Alright, next thing we do is we're going to slide in the hub, make sure the splines line up, pretty much put everything together. The mounting of the caliper is a little bit wonky, so once I get to that part I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So these are the remaining pieces to the bracket on one side. Pretty much you have the rear caliper dual bracket that we already put on. Then the next thing you're going to want to make sure you have are 2 spacers. These are for the OEM rear caliper bracket. That's going to space the bracket out. These bolts here is what locks down the new additional rear caliper, and then this 4 and 5 lug shim is what's going to space out the rotor. You need to put all these things together in order for it to work. Bracket, caliper spacer, and the shim is going to push everything that's in the OEM position forward, because once you added this guy in, the alignment of everything got messed up, so everything now's been shifted forward. Obviously with the new rear caliper bracket on, as you can see that you now created space between the hub and the knuckle, so everything is moved forward. So you're gonna have to add all these together in order for it to work. Again, the first part of it is to make sure you get the 4 to 5 lug shim on. If you don't put this on, it's not gonna line up and you're gonna hate your life because you're gonna have to re-put everything back together. So now we're gonna just find the 5 lug pattern and slap that bad boy on. So now that is going to space out the rotor to the proper spacing. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to put the caliper and the rotor together and then mount it on to the bracket. This is the wonky part. I'm going to put you guys back on a tripod and show you how that's done. As mentioned before, this is probably the worst part of the install, other than if you guys had to fight rust. That would be the second part, or whichever one you see fit. But in order to put the new caliper on, you're gonna actually have to like put it in between. So you're gonna have to like connect it, as you can see. You're gonna have to put it in like that. So you have to connect it like so, and then you have to mount it up, matching up the new bracket studs. So that's the wonky part. I heard a lot of people have troubles with doing this, but we're gonna try to get this on in one shot. Again, I'm probably gonna fail, but we're gonna make it work. Oh, shit. The ricer boys are out, guys. Watch out. Alright, so the first things first, you wanna line up your 5 studs on the rotor. Don't push it down yet, because you're gonna have to also line up the additional 2 in the back. Alright, once we got that down, we're almost there. Now, the last piece of what you need to do for this side, other than the spacers as mentioned before, is you gotta fish these 2 nylon locking nuts behind the rotor, over the stud, and then you gotta lock it down. Damn, the ricer boys are real right now. We gotta watch out, guys. So we have everything hooked up, minus the OEM caliper, because I still gotta put that spacer on. But as a reminder, when you put everything on, you want to make sure that you have a gap between the new caliper and your rotor. When I initially put this on, I started rotating it. I could see some of the rust that was built up on the rotor being scratched off by the caliper. So with that being said, I had to take everything back off and shave down a little bit more of that casting, but now we're good. There's a good gap between caliper and rotor, so we're a-okay on the additional caliper. So now all we gotta do now is slap on the 2 new spacers, put the wheel on it, and show you guys how it looks like. Again, remember, since the new addition of the rear caliper bracket, we offsetted everything, so all the alignments messed up. So now these washers will go here And what that does is that spaces out the OEM rear caliper bracket mount forward, with everything being pushed forward with the addition of that bracket that holds the new rear caliper. So again, everything works in conjunction with each other. So if you don't have any of these, or you missing something like that, contact Villains, but they do pretty good with their product. I wasn't missing anything, but just make sure you don't miss anything, because without these, this whole thing's not going to work. Here you guys have it. This is completed now. So this is the OEM knuckle, the spacer, and their OEM rear caliper bracket. So you need to put that spacer on the top one and on the bottom so that this whole bracket can move offsetted forward. Key point that you got to make sure is that you got to make sure that you see the gap in between the caliper and the rotor. See that? If you don't see that, that basically tells you that you still need more work to be done in the back so that you can completely sit the new caliper on the Villains bracket. And you got to just pretty much keep shaving until you see fit, and also until you see this little gap right here. If you don't see that, you got to do some more work. It's a lot of work. Again, I didn't really have a lot of issues. The only issue I really had was that I forgot to disassemble this part, so I had to take out the whole sliding pins out. But anyways, there it is, guys. I'm gonna put the wheel on, show you what it looks like completed with the wheel and everything. And I hope you guys learned something from this. I'm gonna be working on the other side off camera, and then I'll just show you guys what it looks like when I'm completely done. Alright guys, we're back in the lab. I just started the car to heat it up. This is going to be the end of the video of part 2, I believe, of the dual rear caliper setup on the 240SX. So I just want to give you guys a quick walk around. The sun's out, so I can probably show you guys what it looks like in the sun. And yeah, so here we go. Alright, so you guys have it. It's right there, dual rear caliper setup. There you guys have it. That's a dual rear caliper setup by Villains. I'm using their bracket. I'm using the ASD Hydro with the Willwood GS Compact Master cylinder. The only thing we have left now is part 3, which is going to be the installation of the Hydro, the Villains chassis bracket, and the Villains plumbing for the Hydro. So hopefully you guys like the video. If you reach the end of the video and you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions, any comments, leave it down below. I do read them. And as always, thank you guys for supporting the channel, supporting the website, savageones.bigcartel.com. Again, that link is down below. And as always, guys, hype is for the moment and style is for everything. Deuces.